The second most common question. The second most common question people ask me is, do the neighbors look out for you? Like, do they protect you? The question comes from somewhere. I didn't always have the capacity to dissect a question like that or take the question for more than its face value. The face value of a question like, do your neighbors protect you, is a simple inquiry about relational dynamics in the neighborhood. On the surface, yes, my neighbors look out for me in the same way I look out for them. Most of the houses on our block sit slightly higher than the street or alley. Our garbage is collected once a week, like most places in the country, and sometimes when the garbage has been recently collected, it's windy outside. Because the houses sit a little higher than the alley, many of our garbage carts sit on an inclined concrete apron that separates the yard from the alley. When those carts are empty and it's windy out, the carts blow over or slide down into the alley. I've seen my neighbors pick up my blown over garbage carts and put them back where they go in the same way I do for them. We look out for each other. Sometimes when I leave out of the garage, I'll notice that one of my neighbors left their garage door open. When I do that, someone will call me and let me know. When I notice someone has done the same thing, left theirs open, I go into their garage and hit the door opener button and scurry out before the garage door closes. We look out for each other. Sometimes people in the neighborhood will do something suspicious. A few months ago, after we bought the White House on the corner, one of my neighbors called to tell me that they saw someone walking out of the house. Before we bought it, the previous owner had the place boarded up. All of the first floor windows have plywood screwed over them, and the back door has a full sheet screwed over the locked door. The front door is the only access point to the building, and it has one of those metal security doors on it. It would require a drill or at least a big crowbar to get the plywood off, and those security doors are pretty hard to pry open. I was skeptical that someone was actually in the house and wasn't sure his account of someone leaving the house was accurate, but I figured I should go check it out. I put on my shoes and walked over to the house. All of the plywood was still intact, so no one had broken in that way. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary with the second floor windows, no broken glass or anything that would indicate a break-in. The security door has a deadbolt above the door handle, which has to be locked with a key when you leave. I'm a logical guy, so if the deadbolt was still locked, it meant that if someone in fact had broken in, they would have had to at least come out some other way besides the front door. When I pulled the handle on the security door, it was obvious the deadbolt was still locked. With that piece of information, the options narrowed. If someone broke in, they didn't leave out the front of the house. The neighbor said he saw someone leave, but while unlikely, it was possible someone broke in the front, locked the door behind them, and was still in there. Luckily, there isn't much else to the story. I walked in the front door, made a bunch of noise, and had a look around. All the tools were still where I had left them. Expensive stuff like copper wire was still in the pile where I had stacked the spools, and nothing appeared to be where it wasn't supposed to be. When I called him back to thank him for letting me know and that I was pretty sure no one had been in there, we both came to the conclusion that someone had been on the porch and he must have seen them walking off of it. Do your neighbors look out for you? The simple answer is yes, but when a question doesn't sit right with you, it can be helpful to look beyond the question at face value. The question has never sat right with me. Going beyond face value requires you to ponder the validity of the question or what the person is really asking. What assumptions is the person making when they ask the question? The simple assumption is that living here requires neighbors to look out for one another. And I think that's true anywhere. If I lived on a farm and had a bunch of cows, and one of those cows wandered off into my neighbor's yard, I'd assume they would call me and let me know my cow was on their property. If I lived in a suburb and I lived next to an old lady, I'd probably cut her grass or shovel her sidewalks for her. When I am asked if they are looking out for us, I think they're asking about more than cows and shoveling. What I hear is, are they concerned about your safety? We talk about safety a lot. Safety is the number one reason why people that look like us stay away from neighborhoods like ours. What I hear them saying is, your neighborhood is so dangerous, your safety must be directly tied to your neighbors protecting you from something. I think this comes from those movies where a white teacher is working in an inner city school and she does something special like rap or get them to write poetry, and the kids buy into what she's doing to the point where they protect her from the evils of the school. Like she wouldn't survive there if the kids weren't protecting her. I don't have anything against a movie like that, but it does make it seem like survival here is based on anything other than a person's ability to have positive interactions and develop relationships with people that are different, which is all it takes to survive anywhere. Buried further in the question of do your neighbors protect you is the assumption or the acknowledgement that my neighbors might dislike me for being different and therefore want bad things to happen to Meg or I. It's a scary assumption to make. I'm sure it's rooted in the understanding of how poorly white people have treated black people throughout the course of history. I do not know many overtly racist people, and the ones I have met, I'm not spending much time conversating with. I think it's fair to think that one group of people, after centuries of shitty treatment, would dislike someone from the other group. What tells me the end goal of racial reconciliation might be is what I hear one side, the oppressed side, asking for: equality. People are oppressed so one group can dominate the other group. That oppression is tied to power, and the oppressing group seeks to have power over the other group. My neighbors aren't looking to oppress anyone. They're wishing for equality. When the streetlights are out for the 5th night in a row, they aren't saying the streetlights in X suburb are on and ours should be on instead. They just want the streetlights to be on here. No one is saying that the trash on our streets or in our alleys should be picked up and dumped somewhere else. They just want it picked up here, like it is in a lot of other places. They want the nice thing, but they never communicate that they want a higher standard of living at the expense of anyone else. The power dynamic is never me versus you. It's always, can't we be included? In that question, I also hear the assumption that we needed to be accepted. Meg, the kids, and I are different. We physically look different. While we never do so intentionally, we probably act different. Most of us act in accordance with the way we were raised, and we were raised in a place that is different than where we go to sleep at night. I've worked in a lot of schools. The kids that are different are treated differently. Shouldn't be that way, but it happens more often than not, yet I haven't found that to be the case here. If the way you are treated is the outward expression of acceptance, then I have seen no evidence to suggest that we haven't been accepted simply because we are not treated all that differently, particularly by anyone we have spent even a small amount of time with. That crackhead stole your flowers. The 4 of us, Meg and the kids and I, had just come back from kayaking on the river near downtown Milwaukee. It was a little after 6 on a Sunday night, and we were driving around the block so I could put the boats back in the garage. After unloading everything into the garage, we drove to the end of the alley back towards the front of the house. Approaching us on the sidewalk was a woman with 2 hanging flower baskets, one in each hand. "That lady has my flowers," Meg said. When you live in the poorest part of the state, you can't help but become detached from material things. So it's not like the $37 of hanging baskets really mattered, but Meg does love her plants and was convinced they were hers. I pulled the truck over to the sidewalk, and the woman approached Meg's open window on the passenger side of the truck. "Those are nice flowers," Meg told her. The woman responded that they were for sale, $20. I was tempted to buy them back from her because $20 was a good deal compared to $37. I told her I didn't have any money on me, but I had some in the house. She put it together that she was holding our flower baskets when I told her where I lived and would have to go into the house to get the money. Instead of following us back to the house, she started walking in the other direction. with the flower baskets in her hands. I pulled around the block and got out of the truck as she was near the playground of the school behind our house. As I followed her, trying in vain to convince her that she should give them back to us, Meg started explaining to some of our neighbors what was going on. "That crackhead stole their flowers," one of them shouted. A group of teenagers or young adults on the playground immediately became invested in the situation and offered to steal them back from her. Not wanting a crackhead to steal your flowers is a universal experience. We declined their offer, and the next day I went and bought more flowers. When I think about how my neighbors and I look out for each other, it isn't any different than wanting each other to not have to deal with crackheads stealing flowers. Neither of us wants that for the other person. There isn't some mysterious person on the block that runs crime rings or some gang member that you have to pay off for protection. It's just a bunch of people that would prefer crackheads to not steal their flowers, which isn't that dissimilar to anywhere else. We want an easy, simple life devoid of the problems found in areas of concentrated poverty. We all want that. And because we have a common goal, we're all in it together.